topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert Show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from experts on such topics as legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to our experts in community association law, estate planning law, tax relief, Medicare, public insurance adjusters, neuropathy treatment, business brokers, and personal injury law, along with many other topics. Now here's your host for the last 17 years, Steve O.
Welcome to another Ask the Expert Show. Right, for the last 17 years, we have brought you the best experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Hey, this is like my favorite show. First of all, it's my favorite show because we get all your questions. It makes my job so much easier. But the fact that our show today, we're going to be talking about tax relief. And I was shocked to find out how many people actually have a problem with the IRS. I've also shocked to find out people try to handle this themselves. And believe it or not, most of the time it gets them in deeper trouble. We have one of the finest tax relief companies in the United States who's been with us 15 years. Let me welcome Barry Bauer of Taxation Solutions. Good morning, Barry.
Hey, good morning, Steve-O. Hey, man, hopefully everybody had a good weekend, but don't lose the importance of what yesterday was. It was about people that have given their life, given everything for the protection of this country and the great country that we live in and the freedoms we do have. So, we thank the families for the service of those men and women that have lost their lives in the defense of, the United States.
So true, Barry. So true. Barry, we have all these new TikTok people. The numbers. So let's read Taxation Solutions. Let's tell everybody about your company.
Taxation Solutions is our baby. We started this back in 2008. It kind of grew out of absolute need for people defending, their life from what the IRS can do when you owe money. For probably the last 40 years, I've been, working in the industry, running my own business, usually just a tax business, but taxation grew out of that huge need for somebody to come out and defend individuals and businesses when you're owing money to the IRS. And so, we work nationwide, all across the country. It doesn't matter what state you're in. Even if you're traveling and you're out of the country and you need help, we help people there. And it starts with calling us at 877-996-6477. Again, 877-996-6477. We're just here to help and be of service.
Hey, Barry, I want to talk today. I was shocked to see on TikTok how many business owners there are who actually use TikTok. And listen, businesses get in just as much trouble as individuals. Tell people some of the biggest questions you get from businesses.
One of the big questions we've gotten lately is I've owned an S Corp and haven't filed for the last 2 years or 3 years because I've run almost no business or I didn't make money. You've still got to file your S Corp return regardless of whether you've had zero income or not. You've got to make those filings every year. And the next big thing that happens, and it's probably bigger consequences than not filing, is not paying your payroll taxes. And, that can become, the nail in the coffin for a business when you're faced with 10, 20, 30, half a million, even $1 million in payroll taxes we've seen, because people, it's one of the easiest things to avoid paying, because it takes the IRS a while to come back to you and say, hey, you owe this money, or be really drastic in their collections. But once they do, oh my, you've got to really watch out. They sign these revenue officers that sometimes have absolutely zero mercy or understanding for people that owe payroll taxes. And they're coming after you with both barrels, everything they've got in their arsenal, including trust fund penalties, including taking your assets, levying your bank accounts. They will do it all to collect this money from you, because, hey, it's one of the worst taxes you could actually owe to the IRS.
Barry, we get letters, people just saying they love the stories that you share. I mean, we don't give any names or anything, but just circumstances that come up with businesses. Can you share a couple stories with us of what you've done for other businesses?
Well, we're actually in the middle of one now, or we were. We've actually taken care of this revenue officer as well. We had a revenue officer that was going after a business. They actually owed close to $1 million in payroll taxes. And so the revenue officer decided he wanted to do a site visit, and he went out without me, which one is against the law. If I'm representing somebody, they've got to follow the rules and regulations and notify me and go out. And then he was very offensive to the people that were actually working there, doing everything from criticizing the shoes that they were wearing.
Wow.
So we've got a lot of stuff that we are using in our arsenal. Funny part is we knew these payroll taxes were going to be paid off, and they absolutely were paid off within about 2 weeks of his site visit. But he wouldn't listen to us and took his manager's manager out. And so now we've managed to use that to him and gone to Taxpayer Advocate and, going to the professional side of this thing and explaining that, hey, this guy was totally out of line. We had made a commitment that the taxes would be paid off in a certain period of time. Also made a commitment we were going to do a site visit in about 3 weeks, and he decided to do a surprise one. So, it's the fun things we get to do and deal with. And now the repercussions for him, we will see what happens when we go to the Office of Professional Responsibility and talk to them about everything he was doing to this client, even with the commitments that we had already made, but he did not disclose to his manager or his manager's manager. So it'll be an interesting next month or two for that one.
Hey, Barry, imagine owning a business. Well, you own your business, but trying to get on the phone with the IRS and being on hold for literally 2 hours. Why would you want to put yourself through that?
It's 3 hours now sometimes. And sometimes you may be sitting on hold for 2.5, 3 hours, and it hangs up. Or they get on there and they go, well, my computer is not really working right now. We're having some issues. And then you've got to do that all over again the next day. We've got some priority lines where sometimes we can get in and we can handle our business at the right time of the day and get things moving and get things done. And then other times, we run into the same thing you do. But the benefit is you've got us on your side, and we're the ones making the phone calls. We're the ones waiting for them. And we're the ones that can actually put the holds in place a little bit easier than you can in working with the revenue officers or the agents that we deal with through the practitioner priority line that we get to use. That gives us a little bit of an advantage there.
Don't you see many times where the IRS will tell businesses how much they owe, but then when you actually get into it, they owe a lot less?
Well, see, Steve, sometimes the problem is people don't file their tax returns. And the IRS actually files a return called SFR, substitute for return. Now, if you can imagine what the IRS does, they are not really there working for the taxpayer. They're actually working for the federal government and have the interest of only the federal government in mind. So when they do a return, they don't give you your deductions. They don't add your kids. They sometimes don't add your spouse. Maybe you just got married. If you're in business, they don't take any business deductions. And now you owe the self-employment tax on the full amount, including the federal income tax on the full amount. And so we can get in, we can fix those problems. Sometimes they've now done penalties in error. There's some court cases we're using now to go back and look at some penalties that were issued during COVID that should have never been issued, and getting those reversed as well. So we've got a lot going on that's working to help people save as much money as possible. When we start dealing with those things, we're always looking not just at, hey, what everybody hears, hey, this offering compromise is the ideal way and the only way. And it's going to save you thousands, even if you don't qualify, supposedly. We go in and look at the full background of everything that's going on, figure out where the IRS was right, or maybe where the IRS is wrong, fix that so that you get down to the tax debt that you actually owe, and get it down to the right amount and reduce the penalties, maybe even reduce the interest by fixing these things. And that's a benefit of using taxation solutions.
Here's a great letter, Barry. This is from Marvin in Chicago. He said, I watch your shows all the time. I'm a small business owner. He said, I want to make sure that I never do get in trouble with the IRS, and your show really helps. I have a question. I know you guys always say you're not a political show, but I have a question to tell my friends. They say that only the rich have benefited from this new tax bill. I'm not that educated to give them a good response. Can you help me?
Well, I could tell you this is that everybody benefited from the tax bill, and the rich actually have less benefits from this tax bill. You're sitting there looking at the senior deduction. You're looking at the no tax on tips or no tax on overtime. Many of the rich aren't getting tips. They're not working in hospitality. They're not getting overtime pay. So they have the tax. Now, what the rich have that you don't have, or I don't have, is, you're sitting there with a whole bunch of tax attorneys going through and finding other ways and other investments of bringing their tax down. So they're using things like Delaware Service Trusts, or they're using things like real estate that they invest in, that they get the depreciation and they get, the other items to write off on their tax return. And that's what they use. When we're doing taxes and stuff for everybody out there, we're looking for every single deduction. And that's what some of the advantages you have of working with an enrolled agent like myself and the people that are on my staff is we're always looking for the deductions for, not just rich people. We're looking for the deductions that you can use as an ordinary taxpayer to get the amount of money that you're going to owe the IRS to the least amount allowed by law. Now, we get a lot of people that we give advice to, and they want to ignore it, and not do some of the things that we're suggesting you can do to save money on taxes. And it's because you don't have the money to do it, or the cash flow just isn't there. So, you've got to work within your means to help bring those taxes down. Now, doing a business, and I've heard this one before, I just want to open a business to lose money to save money on taxes.
Wow.
Well, that's not one of the smartest things to do, Because, okay, let's say you lose $100,000 and you happen to be in a 20% tax bracket. You just saved $20,000 in tax, but you just lost $100,000 in business. So net, you're still out $80,000. Now, was that smart business? No, it wasn't. So, you don't want to do things just to do something to save money on taxes, because it costs you a lot more sometimes than what it's worth.
Barry, I don't know if this will shock you or not, but I read a lot, especially on Google, about other companies. And there's people out there that have been, in their words, been ripped off by these big companies that charge them a lot of money. And once they pay it, it's like pulling teeth to reach anybody. Though it wasn't that problem before. And there's a lot of people who feel like they've been ripped off by other companies that don't realize there's companies like yours out there who really does want to help people. I think that might be probably the biggest hurdle. People who have used these big national companies, though you are a national company, it's people, we have to get them through that. And I'm going to say this, customer service with Taxation Solutions is the number one priority.
Steve, this has been going on in this industry for many, many, many years. And, people from back in the early 2000s to current, you call a tax resolution firm that's going to supposedly help you through your tax problem, and they're going to tell you everything you ever wanted to hear, that you would say, hey, that's great, that's what I want. They just sold you the pipe dream, and then they can't deliver on it. And in my book is they're embarrassed, they're afraid to tell you, and then they don't want to communicate, or if they are communicating, they now need more money from you because they're out of money, or hey, they sold you one program, but now they got to move you to a different program, so now it's going to cost you more. That's not what we try to do around here. We're sitting down doing a complete tax analysis on you, try to figure out the best path. Let's go down this path one step at a time, and let's stay in communication. Because one of the biggest things we need is you to communicate to us as a client so that we can be communicating to the IRS as we need to, and so that you know what's actually happening in your case. So, we may get into doing tax analysis, and the first thing we see is that you need tax returns done. Well, we can't jump into a settlement without the tax returns done. So we've got to take everything one step at a time and then move you down the path. Now, maybe we file all the tax returns, and now all of a sudden you don't have any tax debt. So now that resolution they sold you and they kept the money from, they never had to do, but they charged you also for the tax returns. So you want to make sure you're doing this step-by-step process. Make sure that you're looking at everything and the big picture. We don't just say, hey, everybody qualifies for an offering compromise. We go through a financial analysis with you and talk about what you're going to be able to qualify for within the legal rules. Now, we may be able to modify some things that you're doing and then get you to qualify. Other times we could tell you just by, the assets you have, you're not going to qualify. But if you call some of these nationwide large firms that do a heck of a lot more advertising than we do. Matter of fact, I don't think I spent a dime on advertising this year. It's all been referrals or Ask the Experts or Tax Talk
Your
for
show.
You.
Yeah, your show.
That's the only thing that we do. And, when we talk to people, we're trying to go through and say, hey, look, be completely honest with us. Tell us what you have in your life. And then we could tell you, hey, this is where we think we can go. Now let's do a complete analysis and tell you for sure. And then stay in communication. I'll be honest. Hey, month of March, April, was a tough month for us to be in contact with all of our clients because we were busy trying to get all the tax returns done. But since
Oh,
then,
yeah.
we've inundated people with calls. They're like, why are you calling us? You just called us 2 weeks ago. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, Joe, but we just needed to talk to you again and fill this last piece in. Let's get this going. Let's get this done. Or, hey, we just wanted to confirm again that you're still sitting in an offering compromise status, and we're just sitting here waiting on the IRS to get out of their chair and do something, with it.
Barry, I didn't realize how many truckers we have that listen to the show. And I got to tell you something, I might be wrong. So Barry and I have been doing this show for over 15 years. Barry has always talked about truckers, and they don't have time to do their taxes, and they own this business. And I got to tell you, I see all these ads on TV, Barry. Never once did I see an ad that was targeted to truck drivers. And you and I have been talking about this for years. And then all of a sudden, I'm seeing ads targeting truck drivers. And I'm going, they must listen to our show because we've been talking about it for years.
Yeah, Steve-O, it's been kind of interesting about the last year. They've had a few companies out there just targeting truckers, and we specialize in truckers. I actually got a program called Truck to Success put on by IDA, Owner Operator Independent Drivers Association, and so I've been involved in trucking for many, many years and gone to the truck shows and stuff, and we've never had competitors there. Trying to service the trucking industry. We've kind of been the be all end all for truckers and, owner operators that have tax problems and owe the IRS. And, our sister company called truckertaxtools.com has done bookkeeping for truckers and, helping truckers, keep their books straight because they are business owners. And
Right.
They do need to know how successful they are in business and what they can do to help avoid taxes, whether it's, becoming a LLC or becoming an S Corp, or, do they not need that? It's just an added expense, or maybe they can be just a LLC recognized as a partnership with their, husband or wife. We go through all those things with them to help them reduce and keep their taxes to the lowest amount allowed by law. And then, getting those settlements or getting that offering compromise or getting a partial pay installment agreement has been key to, helping truckers. Steve, one thing we talked about on our show, taxtalk4u.com, which is on Mondays at 10 a.m. Eastern time, right after your show, Ask the Experts on Mondays. We talked about levies, and that's something truckers have been known to have revenue officers assigned and start levying their bank account, even looking to take their equipment. You like my funny stories? Well, a few years back, I was dealing with a revenue officer, and it was against a trucking company, and he was just a solo owner operator out there. And we were working with the revenue officer to get a payment plan in place because he was making decent money. And she was about to take vacation. And I was like, okay, can we get this done before vacation? No, we'll get it done after. We'll get a hold and everything. And I was talking to her. I said, where are you going on vacation? She goes, oh, I'm just driving around the country, going to truck stops, looking for people that owe the IRS money that I'm working on so we could repo and foreclose on their truck.
Wow.
What? What are you doing?
Wow.
And she goes, yeah, this is where my vacation goes. This is where I take my vacation. And I went, man, we definitely have a revenue officer problem in trucking. And, so it makes it that much more important, when I'm working with owner operators, to protect them and their business and their livelihood, just like we do for any other businesses out there, or any other individual that's, running a successful business and owes taxes. We've got to stop these revenue officers from levying, your bank account, taking your assets, taking your equipment. And our show a week ago Monday was all about levies on, what the IRS can do and what you can do to stop them.
Barry, something else I love about your company, you really do walk the walk, is you are always coming up with ways to educate people. You have your own show every Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. You have your playbook. You have our show. You're always out there trying to find ways to educate people. And I have never seen a company in your business do what you do. You just go the extra mile.
Well, in our business, it's all about helping people. There are some people that just can't afford to have help. Some people are too scared to get help because they've been ripped off or burned by another company out there. And so sometimes you need that help, and sometimes you need assistance, and you got to figure out what's the best way to go. Also, when you call here, we're going to talk about your tax problem. Sometimes we're just going to give you the solution that it's just, hey, this is what you're going to get. Just call the IRS or go right online and put in the payment plan. And if you can afford that and afford the payment plan with the IRS, hey, sometimes that's the best way to go. And it's not worth, in my opinion, hiring a company to do it. Yeah, I want your money. Okay, don't get me wrong. If you want to pay me, I'm going to take the payment, and I'll do the work for you. But sometimes, hey, the smart move is, hey, you owe $5,000. They're going to want $50 a month or $100 a month, and you can afford to do it. Please go online and do it. Don't spend the money with somebody to get that payment plan and put it into place. Especially if somebody's going to charge you like $1,000 to set up a payment plan on 5,000. Hey, you could have made a dent in your 5,000 that you owe and pay a little bit less. So sometimes you got to be smart about it, and we try to help you be smart about it. I've had people get mad at me going, if I wanted to do that, I'd already done it myself. Well, hey, I'm giving you advice in that this isn't worth hiring us for. Now, if you really want us to set up the payment plan and the full pay, then, hey, this is what it's going to cost, and we're more than happy to do it for you. But that wasn't a smart business decision for that person to do it. And, we try to be of assistance and help. We do.
Yeah, I've actually had two friends I sent to Barry, and he told them that basically what they need to do. I mean, I know if they would have called another company, they would have taken the money first and try to figure it out later. But that's just the difference in taxation solutions. Again, your show is every Monday at 10 o'clock Eastern Time. I always tell people the best way to go is to go to w4cy.com, and you can watch and listen to the show there. But we're on YouTube, we're on iHeart, Spotify, there's 70 platforms, so there's no excuse to miss a show. So, Barry, we have a gentleman from Kansas City wants to know, what are red flags to the IRS when it comes to them deciding to audit you?
Ask AI. I'm just kidding, because they use AI to look at a lot of returns these days. And a couple of the biggest red flags are leaving things off your returns. I mean, when they're doing automatic checking nowadays, you leave off a 1099, you leave off a W-2, you leave off interest, or you leave off stock trades, or you leave off even a K1. Those are all immediate red flags that's going to get you your return looked at and an immediate letter saying, hey, this is missing. Now, if it's a big enough number and it's big enough things, then maybe it turns into an audit. If you're running a business and, maybe you listed all your 1099s, but you didn't keep track of any of your business expenses and you just made up numbers. If those numbers are out of line, those are going to generate almost an immediate full-fledged audit. If you're using round numbers, 10,000, 1,000, 5,000, things like that throughout your expenses, that's going to be almost an immediate red flag as well. Nobody can run a business, and I can almost guarantee this. There's not one business out there that every single expense isn't even, 1,000 or 10,000 or 20,000 or something like that, or 5,000, and you just have a bunch of zeros and they're looking at that, and AI that the IRS uses is going to kick that into almost an immediate selection of an audit. So you kind of got to watch what you're doing, look at what you're doing. And I always tell people is always protect yourself from an audit, meaning get good bookkeeping for your business. Have somebody that, knows you and prepares your return year in and year out, become associated with them, talk to them, get to know them so that, hey, when they're looking at your return, they know, hey, this doesn't look right because, hey, I know you have a brokerage account, or, hey, you run another business and you get K1s year in and year out. Where are these things at? So having somebody that can look after you and go through your return for you and know what's going on, and you be able to answer some questions for them, is going to get you the best result and protect you from, hopefully, audits out there.
This is from Phil in Miami. This is from TikTok. I just found your show. What a great show. Here's my problem. I realize you have to charge for your service. I'm all for that. But what happens if I can't pay the IRS? What do I do?
Well, what was his name? Did he give his name on this?
Phil.
Well, first thing to do is call us 877-996-6477. Let's talk about it. But you have options. If you just can't afford to pay and you have assets, it may be a non-collectible status. It might be a partial pay installment agreement. And we have some options out there. If you have absolutely nothing and don't have enough income coming in, then possibly an offer in compromise. But we've got to sit down and run the numbers, because it's easy to say that here, in this show, and say this is what we can do. But realistically, IRS has certain guidelines that we've got to go through and follow. So you may, in your opinion, not the IRS's, don't have any money to pay them. But then the IRS looks at it and says, well, national standards is the only thing you're allowed for rent or mortgage, utilities, car payments, insurance, medical, and all their other fun things that they have. And once they sit down and they start looking at that, now per the IRS, you may have the ability to pay. And so we've got to work within those guidelines and what is allowed and what isn't, because, when you're dealing with an offer in compromise, and even sometimes, a installment agreement, they're only going to allow certain things. And we've got to work within that to prove that, hey, look, you can't afford to pay. And then we kind of go from there. Or maybe you're on the borderline and you're close to being in an offer in compromise, but we can make a couple of changes that work within the rules of the IRS, and now you do qualify. So, when we're sitting down and looking at that, you give us a call. Let us go through and do the analysis with you at 877-996-6477. Or go to taxationsolutions.net, and you can go in there and set up a time for us to call and talk to you about it. Again, it's simpler, free consultation, free call at 877-996-6477.
Gary, I don't think people actually realize how many tools you have in the toolkit. You've got so many different ways, and if one doesn't work, there's another. But I think that people think it's just about, what if I can't pay my taxes? But you have many, many ways to help them.
Well, our arsenal, or tool bag, as you might say, I like arsenal better, is vast. And, we've been in the business a long time, and we know what the rules are within the IRS. We know how to get and maneuver around each and individual rule for different clients at different levels and different places of where they're at with their tax debt. So, I'll use a good example. Maybe you've had this tax debt lingering out there for the last 7, 8, 9 years or more. And we're coming up on statute of limitations. So sometimes we maybe be able to deploy some delay tactics, so to say, holds and put in place where maybe the statute of limitations runs out and you get rid of a lot of the debt. And now we're dealing with a smaller amount of debt because we're able to let those statute of limitations run out. And so those things can absolutely, work to your advantage. I've got a client right now who we have actually taken down the road and looked at how many years and what they've had a tax debt. They were actually able to start paying off more current debt. And we held off the IRS, and they've had over $50,000 to $60,000 of tax debt fall off in the last 8 months. And they're coming up 2 more statute of limitations that they're going to have another $15,000 or $20,000 fall off in their tax debt. And they'll be down to maybe, I think it was around 15 or 18,000 left that they will owe. And then we'll set up an installment agreement for them because that works. And it worked out really well, for them because, once you file a tax return and it's accepted by the IRS, they have 10 years to collect. So if the statute of limitations runs out, the debt falls away. Now we've got to really monitor this because there are certain things that extend the statute of limitations. So just because it's 10 years to the date you've got filed and was accepted, there may have been maybe a CDP hearing put in there. Maybe there was a non-collectible status at some point that was requested. Some of those things will delay the statute of limitations. And so then we've got to wait just a little bit longer out there because of those things that have happened in your life as well.
Wow. What are the statute of limitations, Barry?
It's 10 years from the date that you filed and it was accepted by the IRS. So if you were doing late filings and it even though you sent it in and it takes them actually 3 to 6 months to get them filed, then, you'd have, the date they received it plus the time it took them to accept it. And then, like I said, those 10-year statute of limitations can be extended by things like CDP hearings and requests for non-collectible status. Now, you could sit in non-collectible status for the whole statute of limitations if you qualify for it, and the debt would go away as well. That would not extend statute of limitations being in non-collectible, just the request for it while they're waiting for them to approve it.
This came in from TikTok just now. They have handles on TikTok. They don't have names like YouTube does. Anyway, this is Ann. Her handle is Ann in Denver. She said, I own my own business. I hear stories many times that businesses are taken away by the IRS. How do they expect you to pay them if they take your business away?
So most revenue officers are going to tell you they're going to do things that are in the best interest of the federal government. Not you, not me, not the business, not the employees. There is no other consideration except the best interest of the federal government. So they come to take your business because they feel like that's the only way they're going to recover money is to take the assets of the business. Or they figure their only way of getting you as a business owner to eventually be in compliance may be trying to find a way to shut you down. And then maybe you might jump into compliance. I'm dealing with a revenue officer right now on a company who decided before they became a client of ours, and they just signed up for transcript analysis with us. And we found out that the revenue officer levied their people that they were doing contract work for. And the reason they levied it is because they needed to get his attention. They thought he was going to start complying and doing things, but he continued just to not pay payroll taxes. So to get their attention, they levied against everybody he was working for. So he has absolutely zero money coming in. And, we're trying to find ways to stop the levy, to get him back so that we can get him back being a paying taxpayer and get him in compliance, and then try to keep him there. Then the IRS revenue officer is going to go after trust fund penalties, which is going to be assessed against him personally for the trust fund portion of the payroll taxes that he owes. So, the IRS isn't looking at your interest or the business or the employees or anybody else's except the federal government. That's their whole job. That's all they're doing. You can say, hey, IRS works for me. No, they do not work for you. The IRS works for the Department of Revenue, which is a division of the federal government, which is all about collecting money from you and I, the taxpayer. And that is it. They don't care about you, me, no matter what they say. The revenue officer I'm dealing with basically told me, I don't know why he's hiring you. He can't afford to hire you. And I was trying to help him. You levied him. There was no help there. You've shut his business down on a continuing levy. He can't even pay any employee. He is basically closed right now, not able to do any business because you have taken everything away from him. And she goes, well, it's in the best interest of the government. He has a right to representation, as do you, as to every taxpayer. It's in the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. Use it, whether it's with us or somebody else. Use the right to have representation when you owe the IRS a substantial amount of money. You don't want to go it alone.
Barry, I don't know how much better to get it across to people who want to try to handle this themselves and talk to an IRS agent. Just kind of tell people what could happen to them, what could go wrong by them trying to handle this themselves, because the IRS is very good at what they do.
So the first thing I want to do is refer you to taxtalk4u.com. I have a great podcast about levies. Just did that a couple of weeks ago, and it was all about avoiding levies. Now, if you need something to tell you that you should not work with the IRS by yourself and that you should have help, you listen to that podcast. It talks about what the IRS can take. And, we're talking about taking everything from your life. I mean, yeah, there are certain things that they can't take or won't take. There are certain things that it's going to take the IRS a lot more activity in going to counsel and getting approval and things like that. But it doesn't mean that they can't take it. It just means they got to go through a longer process. And we have ways that I even discuss in that podcast and our show from a couple of weeks ago of how you avoid levies as well. But when you start working with the IRS and you start getting to the point, maybe you've got a revenue officer assigned to you, man, they are not looking out for you. They're looking out for the federal government's interest. And, they're going to find a way, and they have the will and desire to levy you at any time. And when do they do it? That's anybody's guess. When do they do it? It's usually right around paycheck time. Money just got deposited into your bank account, and you send them exactly the dates that you're going to get paid. And isn't it miraculous that all of a sudden that levy shows up that same day your paycheck just went into your bank account, and now you have zero, nada, nothing in that account anymore to pay your mortgage, insurance, food, take your spouse out, whatever the cases may be that you need to do. Maybe your kids are in sports and you want to pay for their sport thing, and you can't even afford to do that because you're flat broke because they just took it off from you at the worst possible time. And we've seen that happen time and time again. And then you call us and you're crying and going, can you help? Yes, we're going to find a way to help. Maybe we can get some of that money back. But if you got levied, don't delay. You got to give us a call right away, 877-996-6477. Again, 877-996-6477. Let us, try to stop that levy and get some of that money back if you've been levied.
Yes, exactly. This is from Mad Dog. This is from TikTok. Thank you for educating us. I normally don't listen to podcasts as long as I've listened today. What do you suggest if I'm in another state than you're in? Can you still help me?
We have offices around in almost every state in the country that we work with to meet with the IRS wherever we may need to go. I've got people that help me around the country as well. Our main office is out here in Cypress, Texas, just outside of Houston, but we work nationwide. I've got phone numbers to call in all around the country. We're here to help. IRS isn't local most of the time. So, when we're dealing with the IRS, if we get to a situation, we've got to be out there. Somebody's going to be there. We're here to help you regardless of where you're at. I've got clients everywhere from Maine to Florida to Hawaii to Alaska and every other state in between, those points. Those are clients that we've helped, and we can help you regardless.
Gosh, Barry, I remember a long time ago when you and your wife came to Denver. We did our show on the radio station there, and one of our first calls was from Hawaii.
Yep.
And I'll never forget that. I was like, wow, I guess they even have problems in Hawaii. But you even have clients in Hawaii.
And we got a client from Hawaii. And, my wife and I took a second honeymoon, you might want to call it, out to Hawaii.
Business trip, Barry. Business trip.
Clients out there shortly after that show. So, matter of fact, we're heading off to Alaska. I might end up with a couple more clients from Alaska as we go up to Alaska here in another month or two. So, we're looking forward to that, and hopefully we get some business up there too.
Where are you going in Alaska?
We're taking a cruise out of Vancouver to Whittier, and then we're doing a land tour ourselves. We're going to go over to Seaward and then up to Anchorage and on to Takatina and then Denali, and then we're going to end in Fairbanks.
Well, I got to tell you, because I used to work with a couple radio stations in Alaska, and when I went there, Anchorage, it's still light at 2:00 in the morning. It is so strange. And then to see a moose walk down the streets in downtown Anchorage, that was strange.
Those kind of daylights are not good for me because I don't sleep when the lights are on, and I only sleep from when we go to bed till sun up. So I may only be getting an hour of sleep. So, hey, call us as often as you need, and we can continue to do business all night while I'm in Alaska. So that might be a 22-hour workday.
Hey, Barry's an Astro fan, and I'm a Texas Ranger fan, and they no-hit us last night.
Yes.
The Astros.
We may be bottom feeders right now, but, man, we're going to try to work our way back above the Rangers.
I had to bring that up. That's big time yesterday with what the Astros did. But, Barry, let's tell people how they can reach you, your website, everything.
It's taxationsolutions.net. Again, taxationsolutions.net. Hey, and simply just give us a call at 877-996-6477. Again, 877-996-6477. It's a free call, free consultation. Hey, and as always, Steve, man, we love Ask the Experts. Love being on here with you. It's great to be able to do the show and be able to talk and help people. And we look forward to doing this again next month.
I got to tell you, with our 3,754 new viewers on TikTok, we've got a whole new audience. Barry, we will see you twice next month.
Looking forward to it. It's going to be great shows as always.
And
Thank
again, make sure you watch Barry's show every Monday at 10 o'clock Eastern time. He has got some of the greatest shows when it comes to tax relief. Barry, have a great week. We'll see you next month.
All right, everyone. Have a God bless week.
Hey, that's Barry Fowler. Listen, the name of the company, write this down, Taxation Solutions. That's it for us today. We'll be back again with you next week with more Ask the Experts.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.